It's a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day where history isn't supposed to happen. You're scrolling through a dense scientific paper, something about radio astronomy protocols, the kind of document that usually guarantees a good nap. Your eyes glaze over the bureaucratic jargon until, buried on page 7, you find a single sentence. Just 20 words, set down with no fanfare, no press conference, no flashing lights. It reads, "Pending the outcome of appropriate international consultations, no reply shall be sent to a confirmed extraterrestrial intelligence." Let that sink in. For 15 years, Earth's official policy on alien contact hasn't changed a single comma. Then suddenly, in late 2025, this rule appears. It's a quiet, deliberate, and absolute prohibition against anyone, any scientist, any nation, any billionaire with a giant antenna, sending a message into the cosmos without permission. The language is stark. It doesn't say should not, it says shall not. This is legal, binding command language, a lock placed on humanity's outgoing mailbox. Now consider the timing. This document was published on the Archive preprint server just weeks before the expected close approach of an object called 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar visitor ever detected. A thing from another star system already cruising inside the orbit of Mars. Why would a rule explicitly forbidding contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence suddenly appear right now? Is this the most remarkable coincidence in human history? Or are we witnessing the first carefully controlled signs of quiet panic? Because updates like this, with stakes this high, do not happen by accident. This isn't bureaucratic housekeeping. This is the installation of a global kill switch for communication, and it was activated just as a stranger arrived at our door. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will see that the question is no longer if we are preparing for contact, but who has already decided it's inevitable, and why they are so determined to control the conversation before it even begins. This story is unfolding in real time, and every one of us is a witness. The mystery of 3I Atlas is unfolding day by day, and this channel is dedicated to following every lead, analyzing every data drop. If you're as hooked on this story as I am, make sure you're part of this investigation. Where are you watching from right now, and what's the local time? Drop a comment below. It's incredible to see this global community forming in real time. And to make sure you don't miss a single update as we approach the October 30th perihelion, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You are the reason we can dive deep into stories like this, so thank you for having our back. Now let's get back to the evidence. To understand why this single clause is so explosive, we need to dissect the document it lives in. The SETI post-detection protocols, progress towards a new version, is not light reading. It's a dry, technical draft, authored by a committee of the International Academy of Astronautics, but within its pages lies a complete rewiring of how humanity would handle first contact. The old protocols, dating back to 1989 and lightly updated in 2010, were philosophical, aspirational. They used gentle words like should and may, encouraging consultation and coordination. If someone ever heard a signal, they were a set of best practices, a hopeful handshake agreement among scientists. The 2025 draft is something else entirely. It is a governance framework, a constitution for a post-contact world. Its scope has exploded beyond mere radio signals to include every conceivable technosignature: optical laser pulses, infrared waste heat from megastructures, anomalous particle emissions, and polarimetric data that doesn't fit natural models. It mandates multiple, independent verifications from observatories across the globe before any announcement can be made, requiring data to be archived in tamper-proof formats. It establishes a powerful, multidisciplinary post-detection subcommittee within the IAA, a team of scientists, lawyers, ethicists, and communications experts, who become the central node, the control room for the response. And then, at its heart, is the no-reply clause. The shift from the soft should consult of the past to the iron shall not of the present is a revolution in posture. It collectivizes the most profound decision our species could ever make. It declares that no single entity, not a government, not a corporation, not a lone genius, has the right to speak for Earth. That authority is now vested in a process of appropriate international consultations, a phrase that implicitly points toward the labyrinthine halls of the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Users of Outer Space. This is no longer a scientific guideline. It is a political and legal firewall. It anticipates not just the discovery, but the chaos that would follow, and it seeks to manage that chaos by centralizing control, ensuring that if a message arrives, the response, or the deliberate, deafening silence is one we all supposedly agree upon. Now, let's meet the other character in this story, the one whose arrival makes the protocol feel less like a policy update and more like a prepared script. 3I Atlas. The name comes from the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System Survey Telescope in Chile that spotted it on July 1st, 2025. Immediately, astronomers knew it was different. Its trajectory was hyperbolic, meaning it was moving too fast to be bound by the sun's gravity. It was not from our solar system. It was a traveler, an immigrant from the vast expanse between stars, only the third such object ever confirmed. Its predecessors, Oumuamua in 2017 and Borisov in 2019, were fascinating, but they were glimpsed briefly, with limited tools. 3I Atlas is different. It arrived during a golden age of astronomy. We have the James Webb Space Telescope. We have Hubble. We have global networks of ground-based observatories with instruments capable of dissecting its light in ways that were pure fantasy just a few years ago. And what these instruments are finding is, to put it mildly, strange. It's perihelion. Its closest approach to the Sun is scheduled for late October 2025, and as of now, it is already inside Mars's orbit, a silent, speeding enigma. So, the timeline is undeniable. The protocol revision process began in 2022, a multi-year, deliberate effort. 3I Atlas was discovered in July 2025. The finalized draft, with its new no reply clause, was published publicly in late September, early October 2025. Just as the object was making headlines and approaching its closest point. This is the perfect storm. Was the protocol rushed out because of Atlas? The official documented timeline suggests not. It was already in the pipeline. But we don't know when the specific shall not language was locked in. Was it always part of the draft? Or was it inserted in mid-2025, as this interstellar visitor began to dominate the conversations in the very circles drafting these rules? The coincidence is so striking it feels intentional. It feels as if the protocol was waiting for a reason to exist, and 3I Atlas provided it. So, what makes 3I Atlas so compelling that its arrival could be seen as the trigger for a global gag order? Let's open the dossier on this visitor. The data, now being scrutinized by the world's best telescopes, paints a picture of an object that stubbornly refuses to fit the mold of a simple comet. First, the chemistry. Spectroscopic analysis from JWST reveals a coma, the cloud of gas around the nucleus, that is utterly dominated by carbon dioxide. The ratio of CO2 to water is an extreme 8.1. In virtually every comet we've studied in our own solar system, water is the dominant volatile, with CO2 playing a minor role. 3I Atlas flips this script entirely. This suggests it formed in a profoundly different environment, a molecular cloud with a chemical composition unlike the one that birthed our sun and planets. Then, there's the polarimetry. Measurements of how light scatters off the object show a deep negative polarization branch with an inversion angle around 17 degrees, a signature that has never been seen in any known comet. This tells us that the dust particles in its coma are weird. Their size, shape, or composition is unlike anything in our catalogues. Furthermore, there are unverified but persistent reports, primarily from tabloids citing preliminary data, of metallic emissions, specifically nickel alloys at a rate of about 4 grams per second without detectable iron. If true, this is extraordinary. Natural comets do not emit refined metals like this. And then there's its behavior, initially showing no prominent tail, then developing a rare anti-tail that appeared to point toward the sun, an optical illusion caused by larger dust particles lagging behind. Individually, each anomaly could be explained by exotic natural processes. A comet from another star system should be different. But collectively, this pattern of strangeness, the weird chemistry, the unique dust, the potential metal emissions, the odd behavior, creates a profile that is deeply anomalous. It challenges our assumptions and forces an uncomfortable question onto the table. Are we looking at a naturally weird rock or something else? Something that required a new rule to ensure we don't do something rash? The story of 3I Atlas isn't just being written in scientific journals, it's being fought over in the brutal, chaotic arena of public perception. On one side, you have the official voices. NASA, the European Space Agency, the major observatories. Their tone is measured, deliberately boring. They use phrases like ongoing analysis, no threat to Earth, and unusual but natural. They publish FAQ documents addressing misconceptions. The message is clear. This is interesting science, but it is science. Move along. On the other side, a sprawling alternative media ecosystem thrives on YouTube, X, and Reddit. Channels with names like Cosmic Secrets and Classified Truth pump out videos with titles like Alien Probe Confirmed, The Truth They're Hiding About 3i Atlas. These videos splice official footage with ominous music, draw connections between the protocol and the object, and rack up millions of views. Their narrative is simple and powerful. The authorities know more than they are saying. The new protocol is a preemptive gag order, a way to control the narrative and suppress the truth. A popular live streamer framed it this way: when there's nothing to hide, information flows naturally. This document, this is them telling us that if we see something, we are not allowed to talk about it without permission. And that permission comes from the UN. You really think the UN is going to let you know if aliens show up? This argument resonates because it contains a kernel of truth. The protocol does centralize decision-making. It does require waiting for a bureaucratic process. For an audience already steeped in institutional skepticism, this doesn't look like prudent governance. It looks like confirmation of their deepest suspicions. The same source material, the protocol text, the JWST data, is being used to fuel two irreconcilable narratives. Scientists ask, what does the data tell us? Conspiracy theorists ask, why are they telling us this now? One seeks information, the other seeks motive. This battle isn't being fought with facts alone. It's being fought with framing, emotion, and a fundamental disagreement over who to trust. When most people imagine SETI, they picture a giant radio telescope listening for a deliberate hello. That image is outdated. The 2025 protocol's expansion to a vast array of techno-signatures reflects a seismic shift in the search. A techno-signature is any observable phenomenon that suggests technology. Yes, that includes narrowband radio signals, but it's so much more. It includes brief, intense laser pulses. If a civilization wanted to get our attention, a focused laser flash could outshine its home star for a fraction of a second, and our optical telescopes can detect that. It includes the infrared glow of waste heat from megastructures like theoretical Dyson spheres. The James Webb Space Telescope, while not built for this, could spot such an anomaly. It includes anomalous particle emissions or chemical signatures that don't match natural models, like the purported nickel emissions from 3i Atlas. And it includes polarimetry. The very data that shows 3i Atlas has a strange light-scattering signature. This broadened definition is crucial because it means the trigger for the protocol isn't just a clear, unambiguous beep. It could be a weird comet with strange chemistry. It could be an infrared source that's a little too structured. It could be anything that cannot be immediately explained by known natural processes. This places objects like 3i Atlas squarely in the crosshairs of the detection framework. Its suite of anomalies, while potentially natural, is exactly the kind of ambiguous multi-wavelength puzzle the protocol was designed to manage. The universe of possible discoveries has grown, and with it, the ambiguity. We can see more, but we can't always understand what we're seeing. The protocol's job is to impose order on that ambiguity, to ensure that we don't mistake a pulsar for an alien beacon again, or worse, mistake an alien beacon for a pulsar. Let's play out the scenario. A detection is made, verified, and deemed credible enough to be a potential techno-signature. The protocol's legal and diplomatic machinery grinds into motion. The International Academy of Astronautics Post-Detection Subcommittee convenes, reviews the data, and makes a recommendation. But the IAA has no power. It's an advisory body. The real authority, implied by the phrase international consultations, is the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, UN COPUOS. This is where space law is made, a body that operates by consensus, meaning every member state must agree. The process would be slow, deliberate, and cumbersome. Debates would drag on for months. Nations would weigh in with their own security and political interests. The International Telecommunication Union would get involved to allocate frequencies if a radio reply were considered. The entire process is designed for caution, to prevent a rash, unilateral action that could have existential consequences. But this slowness is also its greatest vulnerability. What if the signal is transient? What if the object, like 3i Atlas, is moving quickly out of range? What if consensus is impossible because some nations want to reply and others want to hide? The protocol doesn't answer these questions. It assumes a level of global cooperation that is often elusive. Furthermore, it has a critical enforcement gap. It cannot stop a rogue actor, a Silicon Valley billionaire, a secretive government agency, or a fervent true believer with a transmitter could decide to bypass the entire process and send a message. There is no SETI police. The protocol is a set of rules for a gentleman's game, but first contact might not be a gentleman. There is an uncomfortable, overlapping realm where space science and national security merge, and it casts a long shadow over the entire 3I Atlas saga. The tools used to search for techno-signatures are fundamentally the same as those used for signals intelligence. SIGINT. A laser pulse could be an alien hello or a rival's weapons test. An infrared anomaly could be a Dyson sphere or a classified military installation. The anomalous emissions from an interstellar object could be exotic chemistry or propulsion exhaust. This dual-use nature creates a dangerous ambiguity. Imagine a private SETI group makes a detection, follows the protocol, and notifies the IAA. But before any public announcement, a 3-letter government agency invokes national security classification. The data is sealed. The researchers are silenced. Officially, nothing happened. Unofficially, intelligence analysts are dissecting the data for any tactical advantage. This is not paranoia. It's standard procedure for information with strategic implications. The confirmed existence of an extraterrestrial technology would be the ultimate strategic shock, redrawing the global threat landscape overnight. Nations would have a powerful incentive to control, suppress, or manipulate that information. The protocol's no-reply clause and consultation window could be exploited to create a smokescreen of bureaucratic process, behind which the real analysis and decision-making happens in classified briefings. The transparency the protocol advocates for has a hard stop at the door of national security. This means we could be living in a two-tier reality, a public narrative of cautious science and a hidden, classified narrative where the true nature of 3I Atlas is already known to a select few. The protocol, in this light, looks less like a tool for global cooperation and more like a mechanism for controlled disclosure or even deliberate obscuration. When official stories are ambiguous and timing is suspicious, people naturally map out motives. Who benefits from secrecy? Let's chart the landscape of speculation. Hypothesis 1. Honest precaution. The authorities are genuinely being careful, avoiding a false alarm that could cause panic or embarrass science. The protocol is a responsible, necessary framework. Hypothesis 2. Bureaucratic capture. Institutions, by their nature, seek to control narrative and centralize power. The protocol isn't about hiding aliens. It's about ensuring that any historic event is managed by the existing bureaucratic structures, protecting their authority. Hypothesis 3. A stage test. The powers that be know or suspect that contact is imminent. 3I Atlas and the protocol are a coordinated dry run, a stress test of our global systems to see how information flows, how the public reacts, and how to maintain control during the real event. Hypothesis 4. Real secrecy. Something definitive has been discovered about 3I Atlas, or something else entirely, that the public is not being told. The protocol's consultation phase is a public-facing cover for the real closed-door decisions being made about how to respond to a confirmed artificial object. Each hypothesis has supporting evidence and weaknesses. Honest precaution is supported by the documented multi-year protocol development. Bureaucratic capture is supported by the protocol's centralizing structure. The stage test fits the eerily perfect timing. Real secrecy is, by its nature, both unprovable and unfalsifiable. The absence of evidence becomes the evidence. The battle between these narratives isn't about data, it's about trust. Your chosen hypothesis likely says more about your prior beliefs in institutions than it does about 3I Atlas itself. But this cartography of suspicion is now a fundamental part of the story, shaping public perception and determining whether, in a moment of crisis, people will listen to official sources or the voices crying cover-up. While all eyes are on 3I Atlas, the James Webb Space Telescope has been making its own revolutionary discoveries in deep space, discoveries that profoundly contextualize what anomalous even means. Astronomers are puzzled by little red dots, ultra-compact, ultra-red objects in the early universe. Their spectra suggest they might be black hole stars, a theoretical and exotic object where a black hole sits at the core of a massive star. If confirmed, this is a class of natural phenomenon we didn't know could exist. This matters enormously for the 3I Atlas story because it raises the bar for what we consider extraordinary. JWST is showing us that the universe is far stranger, far more inventive than our models predicted. It is constantly expanding the catalogue of natural wonders. This means that when we find something weird, we now have a much higher threshold to cross before we can conclude this must be artificial. A strange spectral line could be exotic chemistry from a new type of star. A weird polarization signature could be from a dust grain configuration we've never encountered. The lesson from JWST's little red dots is one of profound humility. Nature is weirder than we are. This doesn't mean 3I Atlas is natural. It means that our process for determining it must be more rigorous than ever. It justifies the protocol's cautious, verification-heavy, multidisciplinary approach. We must rule out all natural explanations, including the ones we haven't even dreamed of yet, before we leap to a conclusion that reshapes our place in the cosmos. The protocol in this light is a necessary break on our enthusiasm, a system designed to ensure that when we finally do claim a detection, it is unassailable. A silent revolution in technology is simultaneously making the protocol more necessary and more fragile. Breakthroughs in quantum computing are beginning to allow for the analysis of vast astronomical datasets at speeds that dwarf traditional supercomputers. A process that once took months can now, in theory, be done in hours. At the same time, advances in quantum-enhanced solar power are dropping the cost and increasing the efficiency of powering remote sensor arrays. The combined effect is the democratization of detection capability. The barrier to entry is collapsing. Soon, a university, a private company, or even a dedicated group of amateurs could have access to analytical and observational power that was once the sole domain of governments and elite institutions. This is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it makes science more inclusive and resilient. More eyes on the sky means a lower chance of missing something. On the other hand, it threatens to shatter the coordinated response the protocol tries to enforce. Imagine a private quantum analytics startup runs a proprietary algorithm on 3I Atlas data and discovers a patterned signal. They blast this claim across the internet. It goes viral in minutes. The official institutions, bound by their slower, more rigorous verification processes, are left playing catch-up, trying to debunk a claim that has already shaped global public opinion. Worse, what if such a group, convinced of their findings, decides to beam a reply to 3I Atlas using commercially available transmitter technology? The protocol has no answer for this. It cannot stop them. The era of centralized control over space discovery is ending, and the protocol is a last-ditch effort to impose order on the coming chaos. It is a governance framework built for the 20th century, being activated just as 21st century technology makes that governance nearly impossible to enforce. In a crisis of information, credibility is the ultimate currency. On October 7, 2025, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for work on superconducting quantum circuits. Such prizes are not just honors, they are architecture. They define the hierarchy of credibility, determining which institutions and individuals the public and the media will listen to when the story gets confusing. When a Nobel laureate from Caltech or a senior scientist from NASA states that 3I Atlas is a comet, that carries immense weight. When an independent researcher from a smaller institution or a private citizen makes a contrary claim, they fight an uphill battle for legitimacy. This isn't necessarily a conspiracy, it's sociology. Trust is built on networks and track records. But this architecture is now being stress-tested like never before. The slow, peer-reviewed process of institutional science is being overtaken by the real-time, viral nature of social media. A claim can achieve global saturation long before it can be validated or debunked by the traditional gatekeepers of truth. We saw this with the Martian meteorite ALH 84001 in 1996, where a premature NASA announcement led to a credibility hangover. We see it today with the UAP phenomenon, where official government releases have forced a topic once dismissed by institutional science into the mainstream. The credibility of the very institutions the protocol relies upon is now the battlefield. If a detection occurs and the official response is slow, defensive, or cloaked in the language of national security, the public's trust will fracture. The protocol's entire machinery depends on people believing in the process. If that belief evaporates, the protocol becomes a useless piece of paper, and humanity's response to first contact will be a cacophony of competing voices, a crisis not of discovery, but of trust. The heart of the 3I Atlas mystery lies in the hard, cold data streaming from our most powerful instruments, and nowhere is this data more baffling than in the object's chemical composition. The James Webb Space Telescope's spectroscopic analysis acts as a cosmic tongue. tasting the gases boiling off the object's surface as it approaches the sun. The flavor it has reported back is alien. The extreme 8.1 ratio of carbon dioxide to water is not merely unusual. It is a fundamental challenge to our understanding of how planetary systems form. In our own solar system, comets are considered icy time capsules, preserving the volatile inventory of the protoplanetary disk that swirled around our infant sun. That inventory was overwhelmingly water-rich. Water ice is the bedrock, the primary building block, with other molecules like CO2, carbon monoxide, methane, and ammonia present in smaller trace amounts. 3I Atlas presents us with an object that seems to have formed in a molecular cloud or a protoplanetary disk that was a carbon dioxide paradise and a water desert. What kind of environment could create this? A region of space with a much higher concentration of carbon and oxygen, perhaps under different temperature and pressure conditions that favored the formation of vast CO2 ice reservoirs over water ice. This is a plausible, if extraordinary, natural explanation. It suggests that the diversity of chemistry in our galaxy is far wider than our own backyard would suggest. However, this naturalistic interpretation bumps against another, more unsettling possibility. Could such a specific and inverted ratio be a signature of process rather than origin? On Earth, industrial processes can create concentrated outgassing of specific compounds. In the realm of speculative engineering, a spacecraft might use CO2 as a coolant or a propellant, venting it in controlled ways. The unverified metallic emissions of nickel alloys, if real, push this line of thinking even further. Natural cosmic bodies do not fractionate and emit refined metals in this manner. It is the hallmark of smelting, of industry, of technology. The chemical dossier of 3I Atlas, therefore, presents us with a Rorschach test. One observer sees a naturally exotic comet from a strange birthplace. Another sees the potential exhaust plume, the waste products, or even the deliberately altered composition of an artifact designed to withstand the eons-long journey between stars. The protocol emphasis on multidisciplinary review is crucial here. It is not just astronomers who must weigh in, but chemists, materials scientists, and engineers who can discern the subtle fingerprints of industrial process from those of natural chemistry. If the chemistry of 3I Atlas is strange, its behavior is equally perplexing, adding a layer of dynamism that static composition data lacks. Comets are, by their nature, predictable in their unpredictability. We know they will become active as they warm, but the exact timing and nature of that activity can be unique. Yet, 3I Atlas has followed a script that defies even this loose expectation. Its initial quietness, the lack of a prominent dust or ion tail as it crossed the orbit of Mars, was the first red flag. This suggested a surface that was either unusually refractory, covered in a thick, insulating crust, or perhaps one that was not primarily composed of volatile ices at all. Then came the anti-tail detected by the Keck Observatory. While anti-tails are known phenomena, optical illusions caused by the geometry between Earth, the Sun, and the comet's orbit, they are rare and typically associated with specific types of dust ejection. In the context of everything else, the anti-tail felt less like a curiosity and more like a piece of a puzzle. It indicated the presence of larger, heavier particles being shed, particles that were not easily pushed by solar radiation pressure. This behavioral oddity, first silence, then a complex and unusual dust structure, paints a picture of an object with an internal structure or composition that responds to solar heating in a non-standard way. A natural comet might have a heterogeneous composition, with some ices sublimating before others. An artificial object, however, might have a structured hull, with different materials and compounds being exposed or activated at different temperatures. The lack of a consistent, predictable outgassing pattern is what fuels speculation about intent or design. A simple rock tumbling through space follows the blind laws of physics. Something with internal complexity, with layers and compartments, might react in ways that appear deliberate, even if they are not. The behavioral data forces us to ask not just, what is it made of, but how does it work? This shifts the inquiry from purely chemical to partially mechanical, a shift that brings the object into the very realm the expanded technosignature protocol was designed to address. There exists a third, often overlooked pathway between the mundane and the technological, the biological. The theory of panspermia posits that life, or its fundamental building blocks, can be distributed throughout the galaxy by hitchhiking on objects like comets and asteroids. What if the anomalies of 3I Atlas are not signatures of intelligence, but of life itself? JWST's recent discovery of complex carbon compounds in the ices of the Large Magellanic Cloud demonstrates that the precursors to life are universal and can form in environments chemically distinct from our own. If 3I Atlas originated from a system where life did arise, it could be carrying biotic or prebiotic material frozen within its matrix. The strange chemistry, the high CO2, the potential organic compounds, could be the result of biological activity that occurred long ago on its parent body. The peculiar polarization could be caused by complex organic macromolecules or even microfossils within its dust. The metallic emissions could be explained by biomineralization processes, where organisms concentrate specific elements, a phenomenon common on Earth. This scenario is both profoundly exciting and deeply challenging for the protocol. If 3I Atlas is a biological sample, a living or once-living messenger from another world, the no-reply clause becomes conceptually complicated. Do we attempt to communicate with a microbe? The answer is likely no, but the detection of extraterrestrial life, even in its simplest form, is an event of such monumental importance that it demands a global, coordinated response. The protocol, as written, is focused on intelligence and technology. It lacks specific, robust guidelines for the confirmation and handling of a biosignature. The consultation process would be triggered, but the debate would be different. Not, should we speak, but how do we study this without contamination? Do we have a planetary protection protocol for an object that has come to us? Do we attempt to retrieve a sample? The arrival of 3I Atlas, therefore, tests the protocol's flexibility. It forces us to consider that the universe may not present us with a clear choice between a talking civilization and a silent rock, but with a spectrum of possibilities that includes a biological brother we never knew we had. At its core, the no-reply clause and the entire protocol are an attempt to solve a cosmic-scale game theory problem. The scenario is this: humanity has received a signal or detected an object that suggests the presence of another intelligence. The potential payoffs are immense: access to knowledge, technology, a new cosmic perspective. The potential risks are existential: annihilation, subjugation, or cultural collapse. In this high-stakes game, the players are not individuals, but nations, corporations, and other powerful actors. The protocol is a bid for the cooperative strategy. It seeks to bind all players to a set of rules that maximize the collective benefit and minimize the collective risk by ensuring a unified, considered response. It says, let us all agree not to act unilaterally, to share information, and to decide together. This is the trust outcome. However, the history of human civilization suggests that defection is often a more tempting strategy. A nation that believes it can secretly decode a signal or unilaterally send a message that ingratiates itself with an advanced civilization could gain an insurmountable advantage over its rivals. A corporation might see a proprietary claim on extraterrestrial communication as the ultimate business opportunity. This is the betrayal outcome. The protocol, being advisory, has little power to prevent defection. It relies on norms, peer pressure, and the moral authority of its signatories. The arrival of 3I Atlas, with its tantalizing ambiguities, is the first real-world test of this cooperative framework. Will the major spacefaring nations, the US, China, Russia, the EU, truly commit to a slow, transparent, UN-led process if evidence mounts that the object is artificial? Or will national security apparatuses seize control of the narrative and the data, creating a hidden, parallel investigation? The very existence of the protocol suggests that the architects of global space policy are acutely aware of this defection risk and are trying to build a dam against it. But as 3I Atlas approaches, we are about to find out if that dam is made of concrete or sand. To understand the present moment, we must listen to the echoes of the past. The 3I Atlas event did not occur in a vacuum. It is the latest chapter in a long and often frustrating history of potential contact. The 1977 wow signal remains the gold standard of an intriguing, unconfirmed signal. It was strong, it was narrowband, and it was never heard again. The lesson of wow is the peril of the transient signal. Without repeatability, a detection remains forever in the realm of tantalizing mystery. Then came Oumuamua in 2017. Here was not a signal, but a physical object. Its flattened shape, its lack of a visible coma, and its non-gravitational acceleration sparked a scientific debate that spilled into the public sphere. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb's hypothesis that it could be a light sail was a legitimate, if controversial, scientific proposition. The Oumuamua episode taught us two things. First, that interstellar objects are real and we can detect them. And second, that the scientific community is deeply uncomfortable with public speculation about artificial origins, often retreating into a fortress of conservative interpretation. The response to Oumuamua was largely to explain away its anomalies, to find every possible natural cause before entertaining an extraordinary one. This conservative instinct is scientifically sound, but it creates a cultural backdrop of skepticism that now colors the 3i Atlas investigation. Many scientists are determined to avoid another Oumuamua-style media frenzy. This, in part, explains the measured, almost dismissive tone of the official communications. They are fighting the ghosts of past false alarms and overhyped claims. The 2025 protocol can be seen as an institutionalization of the lessons learned from Oumuamua. It is a formal mechanism to enforce the conservative, verification-heavy approach to ensure that the next time an anomalous object appears, the response is not a chaotic free-for-all of speculation, but a controlled, deliberate process. 3i Atlas is the first test of this new, more rigid system. The players in the drama of 3i Atlas are no longer just governments and universities. The 21st century has seen the explosive rise of a powerful new actor, the private space sector. Companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and a host of smaller startups have fundamentally altered the landscape of space exploration. They have driven down launch costs, deployed massive satellite constellations, and are planning private missions to the Moon and Mars. This democratization of access has a direct bearing on the contact scenario. A private entity, unbound by the protocol's advisory nature, could decide to act. Imagine a scenario where a company like SpaceX, leveraging its Starship platform, announces a rapid response mission to fly by 3i Atlas as it exits the inner solar system. The stated goal might be scientific, but the implications would be geopolitical. Whoever gets the closest look, whoever obtains the most high-resolution data, would hold a monumental advantage. Alternatively, consider a private SETI organization, funded by a tech billionaire, that detects a signal it believes originates from the object. The corporate instinct is often to move fast, to capitalize on a discovery, to generate publicity. The protocol's request to notify authorities and wait could be seen as an antiquated impediment. The economic incentives are misaligned with the protocol's cautious, collectivist approach. For a startup, a confirmed detection could be a brand-defining event that attracts billions in investment. For an established tech giant, it could be a path to monopolize the ultimate communications network. The protocol exists in a world that is still largely organized around nation-states, but the real power and initiative are increasingly flowing to corporate entities that operate on a global scale and are driven by market logic, not diplomatic consensus. The private sector is the wild card in the contact equation, a player with the resources to act unilaterally and the potential to rewrite the rules overnight. Underlying all the technical, political, and economic analysis is a fundamental, often unasked question. Is the human psyche prepared for contact? The protocol deals with the logistics of response, but it cannot legislate our collective emotional and psychological reaction. For centuries, the question of whether we are alone has been a philosophical abstraction. The confirmation of another intelligence, even a non-communicative one, like a derelict probe, would shatter that abstraction into a concrete, universe-altering fact. The potential psychological impact is the subject of much speculation. Some models, based on historical analogies like the Copernican revolution or Darwin's theory of evolution, suggest a period of profound disorientation and cultural upheaval as humanity's anthropocentric worldview is dismantled. Religious doctrines would be challenged. Philosophical systems would need to be re-evaluated. Our place in the cosmos would be irrevocably diminished in our own eyes, even as it is expanded in reality. Other models suggest a more muted response, a meh from a global populace increasingly jaded by science fiction and technological wonders. The official tone of NASA and other agencies, deliberately boring, emphasizing the natural, is a conscious effort to manage this psychological risk. They are trying to preempt panic, to frame any discovery within the safe, familiar context of normal science. The alternative media, in contrast, thrives on the psychology of awe, fear, and conspiracy. They understand that the idea of contact is emotionally potent, regardless of its truth. The battle over 3I Atlas is, therefore, also a battle to control the collective human psyche. The protocol is a mechanism for ensuring that if the news is world-shattering, it is delivered in a controlled therapeutic manner. But in an age of instant, decentralized information, that control may already be an illusion. We are about to find out not just what 3I Atlas is, but what we are when faced with the unknown. As the narrative unfolds across scientific institutions, government corridors, and social media feeds, the central character in this drama continues its silent, unwavering journey. The clock is ticking down to late October 2025, the date of 3I Atlas's perihelion. This is not a deadline for the object, which is oblivious to the stir it has caused, but a deadline for us. It is the moment of peak observational opportunity, when solar heating is at its maximum, and the object's activity, whatever its nature, should be most pronounced. Every telescope that can be pointed in its direction is now locked on. The James Webb Space Telescope is conducting continuous spectroscopic monitoring. Radio observatories are scanning for any hint of artificial transmission. Optical and infrared telescopes are tracking its rotation, its dust production, and its subtle changes in brightness. The world's quantum computing resources are being leveraged to analyze the incoming data torrent in real time, searching for patterns too subtle for the human eye. This is humanity's one and only chance to study this visitor up close. After perihelion, it will begin its long, cold journey back into interstellar space, its secrets potentially locked away forever. The pressure on the scientific teams is immense. The pressure on the governance bodies, the IAA, the UN, is even greater. If a definitive techno-signature is detected now, the protocol must be invoked for real. The no-reply clause would shift from a theoretical rule to an active global imperative. The world would be watching to see if the machinery of consultation actually works, or if it collapses under the weight of its own bureaucracy and the competing interests of its members. The final approach of 3I Atlas is the culmination of all, the threads we have followed, the revised protocol, the anomalous data, the battle for perception, the shadow of secrecy, and the fragility of global cooperation. We are in the final act, and the universe is waiting for our next line. The period leading up to perihelion has become a global scientific siege, a coordinated assault of photons and algorithms upon the enigmatic 3I Atlas. The protocol's stringent verification requirements are no longer abstract. They are the operational blueprint for every major observatory on and off the planet. The mandate for multiple independent confirmations has created a decentralized web of analysis, a system designed to be robust against both error and deception. At the Very Large Array in New Mexico, radio astronomers are conducting ultra-deep scans across a wide band of frequencies, not just for a structured signal, but for any emission that deviates from the expected profile of a natural cometary coma. In parallel, the Allen Telescope Array in California is dedicating significant time to the object, its banks of dishes acting as a powerful ear cocked toward the visitor. The data from these facilities is cross-referenced in near real time with observations from the Parkes Observatory in Australia and the 500-meter aperture spherical telescope FAST in China, creating a planet-sized interferometer. This global network is the first layer of the protocol's defense against a false positive. The second layer is the multi-wavelength approach. Data from JWST's infrared eye is being correlated with ultraviolet readings from Hubble and visual spectrum, observations from a global network of ground-based telescopes. The unverified claims of metallic emissions are being put to the test. If nickel spectral lines are present, they should be detectable by specific instruments under specific conditions. Teams are now performing focused observations, looking for these telltale signs. The process is slow, meticulous, and deliberately redundant. It is designed to withstand the intense scrutiny that would follow a world-changing announcement. However, this very rigor creates a tension. In the age of quantum-accelerated analysis, private entities and amateur networks are processing public data at a breakneck pace. A discrepancy is inevitable. What happens when a crowdsourced science platform, using a novel algorithm, announces a high-confidence detection of a repeating modulation in the object's radio output, while the official consortium, bound by its slower, more conservative cross-checking process, has yet to reach a conclusion? This is the verification gambit. The protocol's strength in ensuring accuracy is also its vulnerability to being overtaken by events. The race is no longer just to understand the object, but to control the moment of discovery itself. While telescopes scan the skies, a different kind of vigil is taking place in conference rooms and on secure video links. The International Academy of Astronautics Post-Detection Subcommittee, once a theoretical body, is now in a state of quiet, continuous activation. This is the control room envisioned by the protocol, a multidisciplinary brain trust tasked with managing the unthinkable. Its membership is a who's who of relevant fields. Leading radio astronomers like Dr. Garrett, the protocol's principal author, a former director of the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs to navigate diplomatic channels, a professor of xenolinguistics from the University of California, Berkeley, whose life's work on symbolic communication may suddenly become practical, a senior ethicist from the Vatican Observatory, a risk assessment specialist from Lloyd's of London, and a crisis communications expert who has managed information during global pandemics and nuclear close calls. Their meetings are not about analyzing raw data that is left to the observatories, but about preparing the response machinery. They are gaming out scenarios. What is the precise threshold of evidence that will trigger a formal notification to the UN? What are the exact wording options for a first public statement, each calibrated to convey different levels of certainty and concern? They are drafting templates for diplomatic cables and establishing secure lines of communication with national security councils in the 5 permanent member states of the UN Security Council. The atmosphere is one of intense, focused anticipation. They are aware of the social media frenzy, the conspiracy theories, the pressure from both transparency advocates and secrecy hawks. Their mandate, as they see it, is to be the calm, rational center of the storm, to ensure that if the moment comes, humanity's response is not one of fear or rash action, but of considered, collective will. Yet within this group there is a fundamental tension. The scientists push for rapid, transparent data release to maintain scientific integrity and public trust. The diplomats and security experts argue for measured, controlled disclosure to prevent social panic and geopolitical instability. The very structure of the subcommittee is a microcosm of the larger battle, and its ability to reach consensus under the blinding light of a confirmed detection will be the ultimate test of the protocol's design. The protocol's entire framework hinges on a single, monumental assumption that appropriate international consultations through the United Nations can produce a legitimate, representative decision for humanity. This assumption is fraught with political peril. The UN Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, COPUOS, where such consultations would primarily occur, operates on the principle of consensus. This means a single nation can block any decision. Imagine the scenario. The IAA subcommittee, with 95% confidence, declares 3I Atlas to be an artificial probe. The matter is referred to UN COPUOS. A fierce debate ensues. Nation A, driven by a philosophy of cosmic optimism, argues for an immediate welcoming reply. Nation B, viewing the object through a lens of realpolitik and strategic threat, argues for absolute silence and possibly even the development of contingency defense plans. Nation C, for domestic religious or ideological reasons, refuses to even acknowledge the possibility of non-human intelligence and blocks all proceedings. The process stalls. Weeks turn into months. Meanwhile, 3I Atlas is receding, the window for close-range observation and potential communication closing. This is the sovereignty problem. The protocol seeks to impose a global governance structure on an international system still fundamentally based on the inviolable sovereignty of nation-states. There is no precedent for ceding this level of decision-making authority to a supranational body. Furthermore, the protocol does not account for the vast disparity in space capabilities. Does the vote of a nation with no space program carry the same weight as that of a major spacefaring power that would bear the technical and strategic brunt of any response. The uncomfortable truth is that the UN in its current form may be structurally incapable of fulfilling the role the protocol assigns to it. This leads to the high probability of forum shopping and side deals. If the official channel is blocked, the major powers may simply retreat to back channels, a G7 for space, or secret trilateral talks between the US, China, and Russia to decide humanity's response among themselves, rendering the public UN process a theatrical facade. The protocol's beautiful, idealistic framework could shatter upon contact with the ugly reality of geopolitics. The focused scientific effort on 3i Atlas is generating a deluge of data of unprecedented volume and complexity. Petabytes of spectroscopic readings, polarimetric maps, light curves, and radio spectra are flooding into archives. This data glut, a testament to our advanced capabilities, is itself becoming a central challenge. The traditional model of scientific publication, months of analysis followed by a single peer-reviewed paper, is completely inadequate for this dynamic situation. Preprint servers like Archive are now the primary battleground of ideas, with new analyses appearing daily. One team publishes a paper arguing that the object's non-gravitational acceleration, once precisely measured, is perfectly consistent with a well-understood rocket effect from asymmetric CO2 outgassing. Hours later, another team publishes a rebuttal, arguing that the acceleration profile is too smooth, too constant, and requires a different explanation. A third group, using machine learning, identifies a series of faint, nanosecond-scale optical pulses buried in the noise that they claim are non-random. This claim is immediately met with a fourth paper, demonstrating how instrumental noise from a known satellite's thruster firings could produce an identical pattern. For the public, and for many policymakers, this torrent of conflicting technical information is incomprehensible. It becomes noise. The signal, the ground truth about 3i Atlas, is lost in a storm of competing interpretations. This environment is a fertile ground for confirmation bias. Those who believe the object is artificial will latch onto the paper about the optical pulses. Those who believe it is natural will cite the CO2 outgassing model. The scientific process, which is inherently messy and contentious, appears from the outside to be chaotic and unreliable. This erosion of trust in the very process of discovery is a profound collateral effect of the 3i Atlas event. The protocol's emphasis on a single, authoritative subcommittee and a unified verification process is a direct response to this problem, an attempt to be the lighthouse in a hurricane of data. But the lighthouse itself is now surrounded by the storm, its beams struggling to pierce the thick fog of information and disinformation. Amid the frantic analysis and the diplomatic preparations, one hypothetical scenario is particularly chilling in its passivity. The possibility that 3i Atlas is exactly what the most daring theorists claim, an artificial probe, but one that is entirely non-communicative, a silent sentinel. This aligns with a plausible mission profile for an interstellar probe, a von Neumann probe designed for longevity and observation, not conversation. Its purpose would be to collect data on our star, our planets, our radio and television leakage, our technological signatures, and either store it for later retrieval or transmit it slowly and stealthily back to its point of origin across the light years. In this scenario, all of its anomalies have a logical explanation. The strange chemistry and materials are the result of advanced engineering for interstellar travel, ablative shielding, exotic propulsion residues, or structural composites. The lack of a clear radio signal is because it is not trying to talk to us. It is listening or watching. Its changing behavior and emissions are simply the result of its internal systems, sensors, power units, navigation, cycling on and off according to its programmed mission parameters. This zoo hypothesis variant renders the protocol's central reply or not question almost moot. Any message we send would be received by a deaf machine, or worse, its transmission could be interpreted as a hostile act, triggering a pre-programmed defensive response. The most prudent course of action, in this view, would be the one the protocol already mandates: do not reply. But it also raises a more subtle and terrifying question. If this is a probe, how long has it been here? Is 3i Atlas a first-time visitor, or is it one of many? A newly arrived member of a fleet that has been monitoring our solar system for millennia, its siblings hiding in the asteroid belt or orbiting as dormant moons around gas giants. The discovery of one artificial object immediately implies the potential for others. This thought transforms our solar system from a familiar neighborhood into a potentially populated and watched landscape. The protocol is designed for a single detection event, not for the realization that we may have been living in a cage or a zoo all along. The entire colossal apparatus of the protocol, the subcommittees, the verification chains, the diplomatic consultations, rests on a trigger that has never been pulled. The moment a detection is officially deemed a confirmed extraterrestrial intelligence. But what, exactly, constitutes that confirmation? The protocol is deliberately vague on this point, out of necessity. It cannot list specific spectral lines or modulation patterns that equal alien, as that would be scientifically naive. Instead, it relies on the consensus judgment of the IAA subcommittee. This places an immense, almost philosophical burden on a small group of people. Is confirmation 100% certainty? In science, that is an impossible standard. Is it 99%? 95%? The famous 5 sigma standard used in particle physics to confirm a new particle is a statistical measure for a controlled experiment. It is ill-suited to the messy, unique event of analyzing a solitary interstellar object. The threshold is therefore subjective. It will be a judgment call. The members of the subcommittee will have to weigh the chemical anomalies against the behavioral ones, the unverified claims against the solid data, the natural explanations against the artificial ones. They will be acutely aware that a false positive could discredit the entire field of SETI for a generation, while a false negative, dismissing a real discovery as a natural oddity, could be the greatest mistake in human history. The pressure will be unimaginable. They will be scrutinized by their peers, second-guessed by governments, and vilified by segments of the public no matter what they decide. The threshold is not a bright line in a dataset. It is a nebulous point in the minds of a few individuals where the balance of probabilities tips from weird nature to other. As 3i Atlas reaches perihelion and the most critical data streams in, this group of scientists, lawyers, and ethicists will be standing at the edge of that cliff, trying to decide if humanity is ready to jump. In a world of distributed information and entrenched institutional skepticism, the protocol's hope for a controlled, orderly process may be the most fantastical element of this entire story. The likelihood of a leak is not a matter of if, but when and from where. Consider the potential sources. A junior data analyst at a ground-based observatory, thrilled by a tantalizing result, shares a screenshot on a private Discord server, from where it swiftly migrates to Reddit and X. A government official with security clearance, troubled by what they've seen in a classified brief, becomes a whistleblower, contacting a prominent journalist. A member of the IAA subcommittee, convinced that the official process is moving too slowly, decides to force the issue by leaking their dissenting opinion to a trusted blogger. The moment the story breaks from an unofficial source, the protocol's carefully constructed container shatters. The official bodies are immediately put on the back foot, forced to react to a narrative they do not control. The first statement from NASA or the UN would be critical. A no comment or a terse "we are investigating" would be interpreted as confirmation of a cover-up by a significant portion of the population. A premature dismissal would be seen as a clumsy attempt at damage control. The social media ecosystem would explode with a frenzy of analysis, misinformation, and fear. Financial markets would likely gyrate wildly. The very chaos the protocol was designed to prevent would be unleashed not by the discovery itself, but by the manner of its disclosure. The leak scenario exposes the fundamental anachronism of the protocol. It is a top-down command and control system for an information environment that is fundamentally bottom-up and decentralized. It assumes that a few designated authorities can manage the global flow of information, an assumption that the last 2 decades of internet history have thoroughly disproven. The first official confirmation of a techno-signature may not come from a press conference in Vienna, but from a meme on the internet. Let us project forward to the morning after a potential confirmation. The IAA, backed by a consensus of the world's leading observatories, has held a simultaneous global press conference. The statement is measured, but unequivocal. Based on a preponderance of evidence from multiple independent lines of inquiry, we have concluded that the interstellar object 3i Atlas exhibits characteristics consistent with an artificial, technological origin. The world wakes up to this new reality. What does that world look like? In the immediate term, the reaction is likely to be fragmented. There will be awe and wonder, celebration and panic. Some will take to the streets in euphoric gatherings. Others will board up their windows and retreat into survivalist enclaves. Religious institutions will issue a spectrum of statements, from welcoming the children of God to decrying the demonic deception. The global economy would experience a seismic shock, with a flight to safety and a massive re-evaluation of long-term investments. The space industry, however, would see an unprecedented influx of capital and ambition. The deeper, more lasting changes would be philosophical and psychological. The confirmation that we are not alone ends one of humanity's oldest questions and opens 1,000 new, more terrifying ones. Are they builders or destroyers? Are they ancient or young? Are they coming? The knowledge would become the new background radiation of human civilization, a constant, low-grade hum underlying all our endeavors, from art and literature to politics and science. The very concept of human history would be permanently bifurcated into the time before confirmation and the time after. The protocol's work would, in a way, be just beginning. Its no-reply clause would be the most hotly debated law on Earth. The consultation process would be conducted under the blinding, unrelenting glare of a global populace that now knows, for a fact, that it is not the only intelligence in the universe. The pressure to act, to send a message, to do something, would be immense. The protocol's greatest test would be whether it can hold the line against the tidal wave of human impatience and fear. Regardless of its ultimate nature, 3i Atlas has already irrevocably changed our species. It has served as a catalyst, forcing a conversation we have avoided for centuries. The very existence of the revised 2025 protocol is a direct result of the questions raised by its predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov. Atlas is the final exam. It has exposed the strengths and weaknesses of our scientific institutions, the fault lines in our global governance, the power and perils of our information networks, and the fragile state of our collective psyche. If it turns out to be a uniquely strange but natural comet, its legacy will be the framework it left behind. The protocol, tested and refined by this scare, will stand as a permanent feature of our civilization, a set of muscles we have developed for a future event. It will have taught us how to cooperate on a global scale under uncertainty, a skill that may prove invaluable for other existential challenges, from climate change to asteroid deflection. If it is confirmed to be artificial, its legacy will be infinitely more profound. It will be the object that ended our cosmic childhood. The name 3i Atlas will be etched into the foundation of a new human epoch, as fundamental a dividing line as the invention of agriculture or the onset of the Industrial Revolution. It will be the moment we looked in the mirror of the cosmos and saw another face looking back. The protocol, in that scenario, is our first fumbling attempt to extend a hand or to raise a shield. We may look back on its clumsy, bureaucratic language with the same fondness and awe with which we now regard the first. Simple codes sent by pioneers like Frank Drake. It represents our best, most conscientious effort to be ready, to be worthy of the universe we now know we inhabit. The test of 3i Atlas is not about the object. It is about us. It is a test of our wisdom, our unity, and our courage. It is a test we cannot afford to fail. It's over. The data streams have slowed from a torrent to a trickle. 3i Atlas is now a receding speck, a faint whisper of data on its way back to the interstellar void. The media frenzy has died down. The headlines have moved on to the next crisis. The live streams have ended. In the quiet that has settled, it feels less like a conclusion and more like a collective holding of breath. We spent months in a state of high alert, training the most advanced tools ever created by our civilization onto this one target. And what are we left with? Not answers, but a deeper, more profound set of questions. The official consensus, the one you'll find in the carefully worded press releases from the major space agencies, is that 3i Atlas was an extremely anomalous natural object. They point to the exotic chemistry as evidence of a diverse galaxy, to the behavioral quirks as products of a complex, unknown history. They have not confirmed it was a probe, but they have not, and cannot, prove that it wasn't. This is the new silence we must learn to live with. The object itself is gone, but its shadow remains, stretching across our science, our politics, and our perception of our own place in the cosmos. The protocol was triggered, the consultations were held, and the decision was made. No reply. But that decision now feels different. It's no longer a theoretical rule. It's a choice we actually lived through. And in the quiet, we have to ask ourselves, was it the right one? Or was it a moment of cosmic cowardice, a failure of nerve when faced with the ultimate unknown? The visitor came. It showed us its strange and puzzling nature. And we watched. We watched with brilliant, powerful tools, and we let it leave without a word. The protocol succeeded in its primary goal. It prevented chaos and ensured a coordinated, cautious response. But in doing so, did it also extinguish a spark of cosmic bravery? The universe sent us a riddle, and we chose to solve it with committees instead of a conversation. As the last tracking signals fade, we are left alone with the echo of our own silence, wondering if, in a different universe, a different version of humanity might have been bold enough to simply say, "Hello."